Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring the topics of music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robby Burns. I think the thing that I was going to say that I wanted to wait on the air is because, one of the many longstanding traditions of me and recording podcasts is there's always like meta discussion about what is going wrong with logic in the opening 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know it's been a while since we've recorded, but this felt very familiar. I was right back to it when logic was not working for you.
It works pretty dependably. Whatever's going on with my Mac Mini is I don't know. So I think that was the thing that we were going to start talking about it, and I was like, nope, wait, hold it, because one of the things that maybe is worth even just a sliver of conversation is like, I don't want to call it janky, but like I have a pretty hacked together home automation system right now that absolutely depends on my Mac Mini staying on. And there's like two weird Mac Mini quirks that result from me having a third-party monitor, which is, of course, your only choice.
Right.
Did I choose the right third-party monitor? We can get to that. But the first thing that's a weird quirk is that I'm running a couple of different types of servers that kind of like trick. So like Apple has HomeKit, which is their whole protocol for third-party home automated devices like lights and speakers and stuff. Well, I have some devices that don't work with HomeKit, so I have to run some servers to trick my network and the Apple Home app into thinking that they're actually compatible with HomeKit. So I run something called HomeBridge, which runs in a tab of the terminal. And then I run another thing called Home Assistant, which is like a slightly more complex cross-platform version of that. It's a similar idea, but it runs a different language. It's got a web UI, although I think HomeBridge does now too. And that is solely for running a thermostat in my house that was in this house when we got it, which is another possibly interesting subject of conversation, but I'll resist for now. And then we have this thing called, it's actually a Mac App Store app called Harmony Bridge, which takes the Logitech Harmony Hub from the living room TV, and it tricks the Home app into thinking that TV is a HomeKit-enabled TV, and then all of the different options I programmed into the Logitech remote just show up as if they're like different HDMI inputs of the TV. So I can do cool stuff like control the volume input of my ancient Sony Bravia TV with the up and down volume buttons of my iPhone if I have the Apple TV remote on screen. So there's like cool stuff that happens, but all of that has to run, and it's like every time I reboot the Mac Mini, I have to like go into Terminal and type a lot of stuff I don't know what I'm doing, so I had to write it in an Apple Note. So I have this whole system of these things. And then there's this thing that happens, this is quirk too, like the monitor, the third-party monitor doesn't understand what to do with the login screen of the Mac where you type in your password. So I swear to you, I have not figured out how to do it, but somehow it eventually turns on for me. And I feel like enough times it's happened where I should like write down whatever I did to make it work, but I haven't. So I'm just every time. So I just unplugged my audio interface and plugged it in my MacBook for the purposes of this recording.
So we can talk about home automation frustrations a little bit because I imagine like anybody who's going to be listening to this, you and I are spending a lot more time at home right now, and my frustrations with HomeKit have grown a lot lately. I tweeted at you the other day that, and a couple other people who I know are much bigger HomeKit users than myself, that I was having this issue where if it was on my watch or my phone or my wife's phone and I requested a HomeKit command via Siri, nothing happened. It would say, I can't find that device. But I could open up the Home app on my phone and go to that, prime example, the lamp in my son's nursery is aptly named Nursery Lamp in Home. And I would say, turn on the nursery lamp. And Siri would say, I can't find the device you're talking about. And I would go in the Home app and there would be Nursery Lamp. right there, clear as day, and I could tap on it and it would come on. My iPad could do it. The HomePod could do it. And so I tweet at you, like, help me. What do I need to do here? And immediately after tweeting at you, it fixes itself. So I'm like, okay, this is great. It's working again. This is awesome. But in light of being at home and now working from home and having a desk in my bedroom and having 3 children around and a wife and animals and stuff, I got a second HomePod and set it on my desk so that I could use the dark noise app and listen to music and do things and not have to have my AirPods in all day to block out the noise from my family. And so I get a new HomePod, and it's a contentious purchase with my wife. I'll be honest. She was not thrilled, but I was like, look, I've got to do some things. I'm going to be working from home for a while, based on what my company has said. I'm only at bare minimum halfway through this, and I highly doubt that it won't get extended beyond that, or that I won't just choose to work from home beyond that for a while, because I'm fortunate and can do that. And so I was like, I've got to get a few things to make working from home a little better for me. So I'm doing this. But you know what happens when I add a HomePod to my HomeKit setup? It breaks everything again. And now I can't turn on the nursery lamp with my phone or my watch or my wife's phone.
And of course, you probably, it's living in your office, so maybe this is less or so, but I'm imagining that, like, you talked up buying the second HomePod to your wife with this idea in mind, like, oh, it's like this Apple thing, and then now she's probably, if it's anything like Mary is like, why doesn't any of the expensive stuff you bought work?
100%.
Sold me on.
And this is the second HomePod. The other one that's been in the kitchen since Apple came out with HomePods already, like, when whatever 13 dot whatever finally released for the HomePod that did the voice recognition where it knows me versus knowing Laura, it never knows Laura, ever. And so every time she'll say add something to the groceries list, which is a shared reminders list that she and I both share, so it doesn't really matter which one of us is saying it because it's going to go to both of us, it always goes, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, bye.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
So yeah, even though I did the whole Best Buy, like, they were selling HomePods for like 30% off, which is really all you should pay for a HomePod now anyway.
Agreed.
So, and I wanted AirPlay 2. I wanted it to sound good. I wanted to just quickly, because I'm working from a MacBook Pro, and that's always in clamshell, and so I wanted to just quickly be able to AirPlay music from there, or occasionally do a phone call on it. Like, the functionality of the HomePod is what I wanted versus another AirPlay 2 speaker of some sort that was cheaper. And so it was still the right choice for me, and I'm glad that I did it, but I'm also just like, I just want you to be better.
Yeah, they're so close. But here's the thing that discourages me, because some of these issues are understandable. Like, I've welcomed into my life a lot more. Like, when we moved into the house, I was like, we already had some Sonos speakers, and I was like, okay, Sonos has some AirPlay 2 enabled speakers on the market, so we bought one of them, and so we kind of like are slowly between Sonos and the HomePods. We're starting to get like audio happening in every room in the house, and because the Sonos stuff today is AirPlay 2 enabled, any Sonos AirPlay 2 enabled speaker in our house can just as easily, you can like send your phone's audio to it. So it's nice. You can say like, hey, I'm listening to music on my iPhone. I want to listen to that at this volume on the dining room HomePod, at this volume on the Sonos Play 1 in the sunroom, and at this volume on the Apple TV in the living room, which actually has a Sonos Play bar hooked up through it. So through the Apple TV, you can kind of get the living room Sonos setup also to play along. So we've got this kind of hijacked system, and it's glorious. It's like so real. It's so amazing, except for then the more devices you add, the more complex it is. And that's amplified by the fact that they're different brands. So like the Sonos network has to be working in order for the Sonos speakers to even be recognized by AirPlay 2. So I'm in the shower and I'm like, I want to beam my podcast to my It's a Sonos that I routinely send an AirPlay stream to, and it's not working. I'm like, why? I go to the Sonos app. Only one of the Sonos speakers in the whole house is even being recognized by the Sonos app. And I'm like, this is bananas. Like, this is obviously not a HomeKit problem. It could just as easily be, but there's these layers. So, and that's the kind of a problem with home automation. Like, even though all of the products that work with it ultimately are conveniencing you by being under this same hood, it doesn't change the fact that there's still, even if they weren't different brands, even if they were all made by Apple, like the more stuff is in your home, the more stuff you have to troubleshoot.
And then, of course, add on top of that all of the devices that are using Wi-Fi and children using it to do Zoom with their students, to do Zoom with their classes and, watch movies and educational stuff. It's like just the drain, just even getting the internet to work right now it feels like a miracle.
Yeah. Siri is also, like, recently for me, this might make you feel just a little bit better about your recent situation.
Was just recently activated.
Was just recently activated on my iPad, which for some reason, sometimes the iPad, because like, I just feel like I'm ranting like an old man now, but like the other day, my iPad wasn't responding to the catchphrase, and it was driving me mad. I went to the settings. Always listening was turned off, and I'm like, I know that I did not turn that off. So it's like, has that ever happened to you? Like an app you're logged into just forgets your password and logs you out, or like like one little setting knob that you swear you didn't check.
Yeah,
is like in an app is like triggered. Like, I just don't know how to avoid that as a human. It's just one of these things. It's like, well, that was such an easy fix, but then like Siri in our dining room HomePod also is recently like pretending that it doesn't know how to do anything other than set timers. So like I've been like today I was like, turn on the bedroom lights, and it said, I don't have any idea what device you're talking about. And just like you were saying, they're in HomeKit. I check some other devices like how's the HomePod doing? Play some music, and it's totally fine. But then not only will it do music, but then what was the one I tried yesterday? I tried to tell it to play the song The Chicken, and the HomePod replied, I don't know any songs in your library called The Chicken. I was very upset. This is with my inner dialogue, and I'm like, go in and through my iTunes library. There are numerous songs called like nothing else other than The Chicken, like no frills, not by this band, by that band, featuring this person, featuring that person. It's just The Chicken. And I'm thinking to myself, you couldn't pick one of those chickens to play, or go to then I went on Apple Music, and then like the James Brown version is like, has like, so it's like got, how they like show you how good of a search result it is with a little meter.
Yep.
Obviously the version of the chicken that all Apple Music listeners tap on right there. So anyway, there aren't enough hours in the day to troubleshoot Siri and HomeKit.
And yet, here we are.
Well, how are your lights working out for you? Are you enjoying them?
In general, it is very nice. Especially so the nursery lamp one it's just a wall switch. I think it's a Wemo. I forget. I've got a couple Wemos and a couple that were another brand that were a little cheaper, which that may be that might be the reason why the nursery lamp doesn't work. It may be one of the cheaper ones. I don't know. I can't remember anymore, but it's nice where if I walk in to go wake up my son, or, my wife needs in the middle of the night and her hands are full with a bottle, just to be able to turn to our Apple Watch and say, turn on the nursery lamp, and then we're good to go. And we've got both of our lamps in our room. We've got one of those in the kitchen, the Lutron Caseta light switches.
I love those.
And I would love to do more of those around the house. But when I went to install them, first of all, our house is older than I am, which is fine. It's like a year older than me. But, I'm in my 30s, so it's an older house, older electricity wiring and things. And I think also maybe a little bit janky when it was originally created to begin with. And so I follow all the directions. I do it perfectly. Nothing works. And we had to hire an electrician to come get our kitchen lights working again. And I still maintain that it was my house's fault and not mine or the Lutron Caseta light switch. But I'm not allowed to install any more of those in the rest of the house, as convenient as it is. Which is fair. I understand my wife's point of view that not only would we have to pay for the expensive light switch, but also probably an electrician to fix what I would do wrong. But it makes me sad.
It's definitely understandable. It's a lot of work. I mean, we have a couple of those. We have a person who's really reasonably priced who did some work right when we moved into this house on some stuff, and he was like, yeah, I won't charge you too much to install a few of those. And I was like, yes. Yeah, the lights, the little bulbs that you just buy, like, single-handedly, like the Philips Hue bulbs, are so much more convenient. They just run into that issue where if, like, the light switch is turned off, then they're pretty much inactive.
Right. And we've got a couple of those in the living room with lights, with lamps that are kind of hard to access anyway, just like kind of one behind the couch. And but then I also have one like our front porch light, but I have small children. The amount of times that they just needlessly flip that front porch light switch on and off, I don't have enough words about how frustrated that makes me. So overall, it is nice to have. I would like to have more. But it's also just expensive and unruly and really, to do a lot of it well, having those switches is better. I will also just say, in defense of myself, like, I have changed out some light fixtures in this house. I've changed out a ceiling fan. Like, I can do some electrical work just fine. But for whatever reason, it's one of those light switches that there are two of them that control the same circuit, one on each end of the room. And I think that was a lot of the trouble, that you had to do something special because of that. Anyway, I don't really need to defend myself and my man card or whatever, but I still did.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I wouldn't. I'm going to just say I would never try it at all. I just assume that anything that's behind a piece of drywall is going to electrocute me. Yeah. I know that's not how science works in my heart, but
who listens to science these days in the middle of a pandemic?
In the middle of a pandemic, who's listening to science anyway? Oh my goodness. We've, by the way, been talking about HomeKit for 20 minutes. I do want to say, like, if we do eventually later, it's not like the first thing I want to definitely chat with you about, but if we do get to any shortcut discussion, I will revisit the topic of HomeKit enough to say that, like, yes, it's expensive. Yes, all of these issues we're talking about exist, but I wouldn't invest as much time as I did into it and buy the stuff if it overall didn't have like a net worth of like lots and lots more value to me than if I did not have the stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, troubleshooting it is a pain, but it overall makes my life more convenient.
Man, so I'll use that as a transition, as if I remember how to podcast, because it's been a while. But I have a shortcut that I run called I'm Going to Bed. And a lot of times now, especially because I don't really want it to run on the HomePod and set an alarm on the HomePod, I do want it to run and set an alarm on my phone and my watch. But so I'll run it, Siri, when you flip open Spotlight, it suggests shortcuts that you run at that time of day. And so most of the time it's in there. So I'll just flip down Spotlight search on my phone, click or tap, I'm going to bed. And it asked me which alarm I want to set, depending on what time I want to wake up. And then it says, is Laura going to bed too? And if I say yes, then it turns off both of our lights. If I say no, then it cuts off my lamp on my nightstand, and it cuts the brightness of hers down so that if she's in the living room, it's not completely pitch black when she walks in, or if she wants to keep reading, she can, but it's not so bright that I can't sleep. And then it tells auto sleep. No, is that the app that we use for sleep tracking that you recommended to me?
There's auto sleep, and then there's sleep watch. Yes, auto sleep.
Auto sleep, yeah. shows how much I go back and look at that data right now. Auto sleep. It tells auto sleep that I'm going to bed and to start tracking like the time between that and when I actually fall asleep. And it just does it. And having that HomeKit piece along with the alarm and another app integration, it's huge. It's so nice. And I run it literally every night before bed. And so, yeah, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, that was precisely my like wake up and go to bed shortcuts were precisely the two I was thinking of when I said that the net value is overall more. Now you have challenged me because I want to explain my waking up in bedtime shortcuts, why I love them, but then also tell you that you may have just solved a problem for me in my nighttime shortcut.
Oh, what problem was that?
So it's the issue of what lights in particular. There's a couple things other than lights that this would influence, but it's what lights are doing if Mary is already in bed or is not yet going to bed at the same time as me. So I have two HomeKit scenes. One of them is called It's Bedtime, and one of them is called Good Night. And they mostly do all the same things. The exception is that Good Night makes sure that every light is off. So It's Bedtime is based on the assumption that like bedtime is imminent. We're probably already upstairs, but you can basically shut the house down. So all the rooms that have baseboard heating have these Mesa thermostats hooked into them. They all turn off to save energy. The Honeywell Lyric alarm system goes into what's called like home mode, where basically it's monitoring all the sensors on the door. Basically, like, you know, if you come into our house, it'll turn on an alarm. The TV turns off. The temperature in the bedroom, I switched this up depending on season. It's when it was cold, it would like heat it up to a certain temperature. Yeah, and then a bunch of lights turn off in the house. I'm trying to think if any other major stuff happens. So the issue is that if I run this shortcut, because the shortcut that I usually run, I get a prompt at 11 p.m. on my home screen to run it, but if I don't, it's in the Today widget where you swipe to the left from your lock screen, and I've got a little It's Bedtime button. That shortcut doesn't just run all the home stuff I mentioned. It also does some other things. It puts my phone into Do Not Disturb mode. It turns on I use the bedtime alarm, not the regular alarm.
Okay.
And then it puts my phone volume to 45% and opens a Headspace sleep meditation that I run pretty much every night. It's super helpful for me to fall asleep. So
you may need to show me how to select Headspace meditations in shortcuts at some point. I didn't know you could do that.
They only expose two
to
shortcuts, but one of the two is called it's called Sleep. I forget exactly what it's called. There's only really two sleep ones I have. Sometimes once Shortcuts opens Headspace to that meditation, I actually will like back out of it and go to a different sleep one that I like a little bit more recently because it's longer. But yeah, so Headspace is cool. Lately I wear my Apple Watch to bed and I'm using the Auto Sleep app as well. So that's collecting the data. And then the bedtime alarm, I don't know exactly why I use. I think I just like, I don't know. It's conceptually, I'm going to wake up using it. So it's bedtime. Also, the bedtime alarm does track some sleep data. I think between the bedtime alarm and auto sleep, it sort of like smashes together its best attempt at what it knows. It's just that by wearing the watch to bed, auto sleep is able to know if I like rolled around a lot at night or woke up in the middle of the night. But yeah, so this is a problem because if Mary is already in bed and the lights are off, then its bedtime scene is going to actually dim. It usually dims the bedroom lights, doesn't turn them off. So now they're going to come on, which is a problem. If she's downstairs and I say it's bedtime, then now all the dining room light, like she might be doing dishes or something, like all the dining room lights are just going to shut off all of a sudden off on her. You know what I mean? So I like that you have a prompt to, yeah. So that makes so much sense.
So for anybody who's listening who's not super familiar with how to set up shortcuts, the way that I do that is there's an action called choose from menu. And And so I've got the choose from menu, and the choose from menu says, you type in a prompt. And so my prompt is Laura going to sleep too? And then you fill out, I've got two choices, yes or no. And then when you select yes, then you put actions that you want to have happen under yes. And when you put no, you have actions that you want to have happen. So I have just two HomeKit scenes. One of them is called Craig Bed, which means Craig's going to bed, but Laura's not. And so it does that in our room where my light goes off and hers dims. And then I think I've got one that's just both of our lights off. I don't even remember what it's called. And so you just put that choose from menu in the middle of the shortcut that you want to use, and you can choose between different HomeKit scenes based on different scenarios.
Yeah, that's super helpful. That's one of like my most used options in Siri shortcuts, and perhaps it's worth a little bit of explanation. Whenever I blog about shortcuts, in particular the Shortcuts app, I always get a little stuck because I'm like, okay, I'm already starting pretty deep. I mean, if you're listening to this and you have no idea what the Shortcuts app is, and what we just described sounds like a cool thing, you should download it. It's free. Apple makes it. And
starting in iOS 13, it's just on your device. It's on your iOS devices. Right. So you may have just wondered what that strange app was.
You probably buried it in a folder with news. Although I've been using the Apple News app lately.
I've used it so much. I had it deleted off my phone for a while, and then for some reason it came back recently. I don't even remember.
Anyway, Shortcuts is like a way where you can take all these actions that your apps can do and you just drag them in an order and then tap a run button and watch as all of them happen simultaneously. So like a really characteristically simple one that I like to, whenever I'm teaching someone how shortcuts work, is actually I go to that one I was describing earlier where I have my master bathroom speaker play a podcast. That's only a 3-step action. And that is, that goes like such. I reorganized all of mine a little bit and did some color coding. So there we go. Listen to podcast in the shower. So the first step is from my podcast player, which is Overcast, but pretty much all of the main podcast players have a step that'll basically take whatever the most recent podcast you were listening to was, and it'll start playing it out of your phone. The second step is a step that uses AirPlay. So it's called Set Playback Destination To, and then it just lets you choose a speaker in your house. So I've chosen the bathroom Sonos. And then my third step sets my volume to 63%, which seems to be the volume that I can hear it over the shower water, but not annoy Mary through the door. So that's a really easy, and that, I mean, seriously, like they look like little colorful blocks. You just choose the action and then you drag it into the shortcut body. And then when you run it, all three of those actions happen in the sequence that you drag them. So, but yeah, this whole idea of having like one of your actions be a prompt, which then how you answer the prompt can lead to different steps. It's sort of like building a choose your own adventure. And I love it because I need to solve this light problem. What I've been doing lately is I actually edited my bedtime scene so that it doesn't do anything with the bedroom lights. And instead, I have kind of like a 2-part sequence. So I like run that scene. And then what I'll sometimes later do is just run the goodnight scene, which is the total shutdown. And actually, nerd alert, I have a goodnight scene also on our Amazon Echo, which is nearby. And you can do some cool stuff with scenes on an Echo. Like, for example, not only can I say goodnight and it'll turn off all the lights, but the Headspace app, this is like become the Headspace power users show, I feel like. The Headspace app can not only like open one or two things, it can like open, it can like do a much greater variety of the Headspace library, but it can also like initiate the session. So like I can say good night Echo thingy, and then it can turn off the lights. It can read me a news briefing. It can tell me what's on my calendar for the next day. And then the calming, soothing, what's the guy's name?
Andy.
Who does the Headspace? Is it Andy?
It's Andy.
Andy's voice. Andy just comes right on. As soon as Alexa is done telling me all my events for the next day, how busy I am, then Andy comes right in. He's like, but don't worry about that yet. I'm going to soothe you with a sleep meditation. And then it's it's all good from there.
I just want to point out the contradiction of this being the Headspace power users and you not remembering, hi, I'm Andy. Please don't. If there's anybody in the UK listening, I'm sorry for that accent just now. I am from Georgia. I'm from the South. I'm not great at that.
It's forgiven. Well, I guess I don't. My opinion on that doesn't matter. Hey, can I tell you my I'm awake shortcut too?
Yes, please, because I don't have one of these, and I feel like I need one.
Okay, it's pretty fun. So it like reverses some things that the I'm in bed one does. So it turns back off do not disturb. And I'll get to my favorite thing about the shortcut is how it's triggered. I'll get to that. So it then reads me the weather. And you can use Apple Weather has an action for that, but I use Carrot, which is a fun weather app. So I take this medication where I'm not supposed to eat.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to be a rude podcast guest and just go back to the reading the weather. Because I would like this, but how do you square with sharing a room with somebody? Like, is there do you want to hear the weather prompt or like, if Mary's still asleep, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So there has not been a day since Theo was born where they're not already awake in bed next to me and have like, he pretty much is making her struggle like from 5 a.m. and on. And she usually just lets me like, well, what is time anymore? Back when I was going to work at the same time every day, I would like wake up around 6:50 or 7. And so I don't know. It's usually not a disruption. Okay. If she's sleeping, it's a very light sleep that doesn't really matter if he's ruined. Like he's usually like in bed and she's just like playing with him at a certain point. I don't know. Our sleep, like I'm sleeping the number of hours that is normal, but it's not like a quality of sleep, if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm only a few months ahead of you on the newborn thing, but sleep is a lot better for Sam. So I had forgotten that there was that aspect going on for you guys as well.
And Mary like takes a lot of the lead in that. And like there's like a lot of his needs also only she can provide, but like she does a lot of the changing in the middle of the night and stuff. So like she's being like really like doing me a super solid on sleep, but it doesn't matter. Like the crying and you know what I mean? Like it's just a lesser quality. Anyway, that's a long way of saying it's not an issue, but I would just delete that step, I think, if it were. So so the clock starts a 60-minute timer and then a text. I have a little action called text where you just type in some text, and then a follow-up action called speak text, which speaks whatever the text is from the previous action. And this action says, take your medication. It actually helps me to have it say that because I will forget. And then it runs the good morning scene, which is like pretty much the opposite of bedtime. The alarm disarms, the lights turn on downstairs, the temperature changes in the house a little bit. I would love it to start playing music in the speakers, but that was where she drew the line. She was like, no, you cannot be rolling around at 7 a.m. with Stevie Wonder playing as much as we all love Stevie Wonder. Happy birthday, Stevie Wonder, at the day of our recording.
Is it? Well, happy birthday. I was not aware. Happy birthday. No, please don't. Please edit my singing out of the podcast. I had to sing Stevie Wonder's Happy Birthday song to him on his birthday, though. I feel good about it. I leave it in. You're good.
I'll do it. Yeah, no, that way I was editing that out. That's my good morning alarm. What I like most about my good morning shortcut, what I like the most about it is that you can automate it inside of the Shortcuts app to be triggered by so many different things you can automate a shortcut with. But I love that one of them is stopping or snoozing your alarm for the morning. So my good night shortcut has set up the bedtime alarm to wake me up around 6:50 or 7 or so. The alarm itself, if I stop it or snooze it, will automatically just start doing all this stuff. So pretty much it feels like a 0-step process because I'm going to snooze my alarm anyway. So all my lights just start turning on and you know the drill.
That's awesome. I just worry because I'm just more of a morning person than Laura is. And so I try and get up before her. Well, not intentionally before her, but I try and get up at a certain time, and that's generally before her. So I got to think through what could be useful for something like that. But I do love the alarm being the trigger for it, so you don't have to think about it.
I've like really gone wild with some of these shortcuts, in particular these two, and I always am paring them back. They're always much more meaningful to me when they have only the essentials in them. Like you used to do super fancy stuff. I'd be like, well, what if like I want to do a workout first thing in the morning? Then the Peloton app should open up next. And like, no, I'd never work out in the morning. Like it was just a pipe dream. So, or like meditate, you know, I have all these like these things that I get in my head. Like it would be so cool if I could add one more step to it. And then in reality, like it's fine if it's 3 steps.
Yep.
Yeah. So shortcuts. Well, I kind of want to continue talking about automation, but I want to talk about a little bit, maybe some Mac automation, but I want to talk about that because you've been using a Mac more lately, but you've been using a Mac lately because of a recent job you got. And the recent job you got is the reason why we haven't been doing our other show, The Class Nerd, recently. So I thought maybe should we talk about The Class Nerd?
Yeah. So you and I, back in November, recorded an episode of The Class Nerd that never saw the light of day because neither of us had time to edit it. And we listened back to it, and there was a lot of conversation that was just very of the time. It was the weekend before Disney Plus launched, and we spent a lot of time talking about our expectations for The Mandalorian, which when we got back around to it in February just didn't seem like it was worth publishing. But that episode was kind of supposed to be the swan song episode because, The Class Nerd was our podcast about using these Apple tools in the classroom. And as you said, back in the fall, I took a job outside of the classroom. I'm working for an ed tech company now. And I love what I get to do. And it's been super exciting in the pandemic to be able to help districts with their distance learning initiatives and things like that. So I'm super grateful for it. But I just, didn't feel like I had something to offer on the topic of using technology in the classroom in the same way that we talked about on The Class Nerd. And B, the time we recorded that in November and it was February before either of us even tried to look at it again to edit it. It just, it didn't work. So as much as it kind of made me sad, I felt like it was time to say goodbye to The Class Nerd. And so that's kind of why we got there and why I'm a guest on Robby's show instead of us doing another episode of The Class Nerd.
Yeah, we thought we would kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah. And so, as Robby mentioned, as part of my new job, I'm now on a Mac instead of, before this, I was running my entire classroom off an iPad Pro. And it's been super interesting, like as iOS 13.4 and trackpad support and the new Magic Keyboard has come out. Like, if I was still in the classroom, I don't think there is a price tag that Apple could have put on that Magic Keyboard with trackpad that would have been too much for me. It would have made my life so much better as a teacher, working from my iPad. That there is a price tag that would have been too high. I don't know what that is, but it's a figure of speech. But I was working as a teacher. All that to say, now I'm on my current job. I have to use a work device. I'm dealing with some sensitive data and stuff. They don't allow us to use it on a personal device for good reason. And B, I do, even before the pandemic hit, I spent all day on Zoom. My world has been Zoom for months, and now it's just it feels like everybody's catching up to me. And one thing that iPads are really not good at is Zooming and something else. You can do Zoom, but like if I want to take notes on what I'm zooming in another window. Can't do it. Shuts off the camera. Does it like you can't do anything else on that device and zoom at the same time. And for what my job is, that was a big problem. And so I couldn't use my iPad anymore, and I am back on the Mac. But I feel just like a complete Mac newbie. Like, even though I've been using a Mac since like 2003, something like that, because my automation skills came of age on iOS with workflow, with drafts. And we can talk about drafts on the Mac too, because I have it, but I'm not using it in any way. But because my automation skills came along there, now I'm back on the Mac and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Alfred and, Automator and all these things, like, I don't know what I'm doing. So if you want to impart some Mac wisdom onto me, Robby Burns, I'm here to learn from you.
Whenever we would record the Class Nerd, you would I always just felt like if I got a little stuck in shortcuts, you would at the least know where to point me to go. And I was always so thankful for that. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. When you go to the Mac, you're going to be on the Mac. And then all of a sudden, like, I can get stuck in Keyboard Maestro or the Automator. And I'm just going to text Craig and he's going to solve all my problems. And then you're like, no, I'm running like a pretty basic vanilla Mac situation here. Just doing my job, what my job requires of me. So no, we should totally talk about that. And then I'm gonna try to get you so hyped about automation that you're gonna I'm gonna tell you the avenues that are cool, so then you can in a month teach me how to do them better.
And some of it is just aspects of my job, like a lot of businesses. I'm trying not to talk in too much specifics about my specific company, but like a lot of businesses, we use a CRM or customer relationship manager, and the tool that we use, there's no API, there's no I'm just in that tool, and I use Slack a lot to communicate with my team, and I use email to communicate with customers, and then I do Zoom sessions. Like, those are the four things that I'm in 95% of the time, I would say. And so figuring out ways to automate things that were not really built to be automated on the Mac, I'm thinking maybe along the lines of Text Expander or Alfred or something like that might be cool. And maybe even Keyboard Maestro. And all these tools, I feel like I have enough automation understanding that I could apply them. I just don't know how they're going to be useful for me.
Yeah. So let's go there. The first one you mentioned is drafts. Drafts is actually, let me tie in some things that you said. So I actually did buy the iPad keyboard cover. And strangely, I feel like we're reversing our roles in life, because I have been doing 99% of my work on the iPad. Recently an app came out for the iPad called Staffpad. I'll link my review to it in the show notes. Also, I had two friends of mine on 2 episodes ago. We talked about it for the whole episode. It's a notation editor that is amazing. It converts your Apple Pencil notation into professional music notation. It's to me, that plus iOS 13 plus iOS 13.4 trackpad support, it's just an OS that I feel really comfortable and competent in, that I still do some things slower than I would on the Mac. But I feel pretty good. And when I was on leave, I used almost exclusively the iPad around the house. It was so easy while holding a baby in one hand to just carry around a tablet. And then for the first time ever, when I got back to school after leave, it actually was starting to stick. I actually was putting it, not just using the tablet part of it in band rehearsal as a sheet music reader like I used to, but I was actually typing on the iPad and using iOS when I would sit down to do tasks and email and stuff. So it's really starting to stick for me. Draft obviously is an essential part of that workflow, because of how well it's implemented on the Mac and how much feature parity there is, mixed with the fact that I am using my iPad a lot like a Mac with this new keyboard and these new OS features. I would say use drafts on the Mac exactly the same way you would use it on the iPad, because like I was amazed when Greg Pierce, also who has, I'll link his episode in the show notes. He was a guest on the show numerous seasons ago. When he released the feature for the Mac where you could actually like trigger actions on your text. Let me back up. If you don't know drafts, you probably have never listened to the show before, or my show with Craig, the class nerd. But Drafts is an app that it's like a note-taking app that you just instantly get transported to a blank screen. Very zen. You type your note. It's meant to get you straight to the taking your thought down part of the process without fiddling with a note app. And then once you get a bunch of these like little snippets, these drafts of text, then you have a series of actions you can run on them that can do the most of them send the text to an app. So like, hey, make this a message to my wife, or make this an email to this person, or you can get really powerful, like take it and run, a JavaScript on it. So anyway, so the Mac version of Drafts didn't have the actions at first. Then it got the actions, and it was amazing when it got the actions. Literally like 95% of them just worked on the Mac, because the URL schemes that are underneath the actions were consistent enough on both platforms. Like, for example, in Drafts, I have this one action that will take a text note that I've stored, and it will just send that to my task management app, Omnifocus, as a task. So like if I type, don't forget the milk, sends it to Omnifocus. Well, on the Mac, the actions that I had set up on the iPad synced over iCloud, and then whatever like fancy business was underneath of that send this to Omnifocus action on iOS is the same way that Omnifocus would work on the Mac. So like it just works. You just send it there and it goes there. Same with the Ulysses app, which I write blog posts in. Same with Day One, which is a journaling app. The message, send this to a text message feature worked the same. The send it as an email feature worked the same. Like I'm looking at my draft actions here, and almost all of them just worked on the Mac Day One.
I wonder, remind me, do you use Slack in any way? Are there any Slack actions?
I don't have any, but my music team does use Slack to communicate.
I'm gonna have to look and see if because I have different people on my team that I just use iMessage with, others that I use Slack. I wonder if I could just create like a workspace of different communications and start them all in Drafts.
I think you could. Yeah, I don't know how extensive the support is, but Slack's APIs are pretty robust.
Oh.
The thing that's cool is that the stuff that doesn't, like, there's some shortcuts integration in the iOS version of Drafts, and there's no shortcuts on the Mac, so you don't see those actions on the Mac. But then on the Mac, there's now recently been added AppleScript support, and you don't have those actions on iOS. So like just through process of stealing people's custom actions from the Drafts website, I have like on iOS, I have something that will take my draft and send it to the Notes app on iOS using shortcuts. Well, on the Mac, I have that same action, but it just does it with AppleScript. And so it looks nearly the same to me, even though it's a totally different automation tool.
Interesting. Yeah. And I apologize because I just went down a rabbit hole on the Drafts forums, just trying to figure that out about Slack. But you may have mentioned you can select which actions. You can keep the same action, but select which actions happen on iOS versus on the Mac, so that it's not two separate actions.
Well, the way I have it set up is just that it does show me the same list of actions, but some of them, like if it involves Siri shortcuts, on the Mac side of things, it will not, on the iOS side, it will not show that action on the Mac. But then alternatively, AppleScript actions on the Mac will not show up on iOS. So what I was just saying a second ago is that I've just basically like duplicated them. So like my add this to Apple Notes action on iOS uses shortcuts, but it uses AppleScript on the Mac. Now, if you want to automate Slack, should we talk about Alfred?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Alfred is, and there's lots of stuff, like there's the Automator. If there's time, we'll talk about Keyboard Maestro, but my favorite automation app on the Mac is Alfred, and it is an app that you map to a keyboard shortcut, and then it pops up something much like the Spotlight on Mac, just a little gray rectangle. And then at its basic level, you're using it in the same way you would use Spotlight to search for files on your computer. But Alfred is a little, it's got some smarts. So it will remember frequently accessed files and order them in that order. So if you look for a file called students list over and over again, and you keep selecting it once you're searching it, then when you type the trigger for Alfred and you type the letter S, you'll see that it starts to learn, hey, you want the student list, right? So just by typing the letter S, it'll pop up student list as the first search result. Now, Alfred has a ton of other features baked into it that Spotlight doesn't have, but then you can actually add your own custom workflows. And like with drafts actions, you can steal these from user forms. You can take really advanced ones that other people have built, and you can implement them. Now, I would use... there's a couple things I actually prefer about Alfred to the Spotlight that are default behavior. Like its default behavior for if it doesn't know what you're typing is to do a Google search. So with Spotlight, you have to I think it's Command B will take whatever you typed into it and search it on whatever your default search engine is. Alfred, if I type a really ridiculous thing that just comes to my brain and hit enter, my muscle memory is like just trained to know, hey, that's going to search Google for it. I also like that the dictionary and the spelling features and some of the other Alfred features are more like using a natural English kind of thing. So I can type into Alfred spell and then a word, and then it'll pop up the dictionary result. And then I can hit Command C and copy the words, correct spelling to my clipboard and then paste it somewhere. You can also say define this word. I don't know how to actually tell Spotlight to define a word. Like if you type in a word, the dictionary will be a search hit, but it'll sometimes be, like 10 to 20 search results down. Whereas if you just tell Alfred define this word, it will. And then I've got a lot of app, like search or run an action in an app kind of workflows. So for example, I've got an action that will search Omnifocus, which is great. I'm glad that I have that. But one of the minor downsides of Alfred is it can't be my only search bar that I use because certain third-party apps can access Spotlight that Alfred doesn't see quite the same way. So like Omnifocus exposes its database, all of its tasks and project names to the Spotlight, and you can even get a visual representation of them that looks like Omnifocus when you hover the mouse over them.
Interesting.
Alfred, for some of these third-party apps, requires you to have like special search plugins. So another kind of frustrating example is like drafts. Like for me to search drafts, I have a drafts plugin that is, I invoke Alfred and then I type in the letter D and then a space, and then I can start searching drafts, which is a little frustrating. So I still, for like my Spotlight is like my main searching. So there is a particular app we'll get to later that I definitely, like anytime I'm searching Spotlight, I definitely want this app to be included in that search. So Spotlight is still my main jam, but Alfred is more for like performing actions. So let me give you a few more examples. One of my favorite ones is called Messages, and you natural English type. It's like typing to Siri. It's like typing what you would say to Siri. You invoke Alfred and then you say, message Craig, yo, what's up, enter. And then in the background, without even opening the Messages app, it just sends you that message.
Oh, that's nice.
I've got another one that does it for email. It's called Mail To. It might only work with Gmail, but you type an @ symbol and then you type a name of a contact that's in your contacts list, and then you type the body of the email, and then you hit enter, and then it just sets up the email for you all in one step.
See, this is super helpful. So I've had the free version of Alfred installed for months now, and I've used a few things, like used it as a more advanced Finder or more advanced version of Spotlight to find certain files. And I also like that you can just use it as a calculator without having to open up a calculator app. But I haven't pulled the trigger on purchasing the full version, because I just haven't really understood what the workflows could do for me. So I think I'm going to have to do this at some point.
Those are two of the ones that really are, I scream on the inside when I invoke them and do those, because it's just so fluid. You don't even have to, like, the computer is like I don't know how to say this. Like, it just becomes totally transparent. Like, it doesn't even exist when you do those things. Like, it goes straight from your brain to an action in the real world. I like Giphy has a workflow where you can like search the entire Giphy database right from within Alfred and then copy a GIF to your clipboard. Searching specific websites is super handy. Like, I can type into Alfred Amazon space and then my search queue, and then it'll just search. It'll take me to Amazon's website as if I had searched that. Super handy for also Google Drive, which I use in my school district. So Drive space and then my search queue will just search Google Drive on the web for it.
Yeah. I'm going to be digging into this more here soon.
This is the one that I've saved for last. I've got a Slack workflow that allows you to jump straight into direct messages and Slack channels from Alfred.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I need this.
I will share links to, oh gosh, it's going to take so long to make these show notes. I will share links to every one of these workflows I have mentioned in the show notes. They are really easy to install. Also, you can run an Apple script or an automation from the automator in Alfred. So like, I have this thing I do sometimes on the Mac where I'm drafting a blog post in a text editing app, and I want to see them. I'm writing in Markdown, which, if you don't know what Markdown is, listen to, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, David McDonald came on, and we talked a lot about paperless iPad workflows, but we talked about Markdown. It's basically a shorthand syntax for writing HTML code, but it's really useful for people who write blog posts for like shorthanding headings and subheadings and lists and things. So if I'm like writing in Markdown and I want to see what the end result of that formatting will look like, I'll open an app called Marked for the Mac, which is actually a pretty fun, nerdy app you would appreciate.
I have Marked back from long ago before I switched to iPad only, and I still own it. I don't use it much because I just don't work in Markdown like I used to, but it's a great app. Brett Terpstra has a couple of Apple scripts that will open whatever text document you're looking at in Marked, and those are super easy to trigger from Alfred. I just have them all in a little folder of scripts, and Alfred knows what they are, even if I mix up, because I think I've named them weird things, like this one says open blog in Marked 2, open blog, because what app, I added in a couple of different writing apps, so I think like the title of each script includes the word Marked because it's going to Marked, but it also includes the title of the app I'm working with. It doesn't matter if I mix up the order of what I'm typing. It always pops to the top of the search result list what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Like IA Writer is the one that I use that to blog pretty regularly, and I invoke Alfred, IA Writer to Marked, and then boom, enter, done.
That's pretty great. You've convinced me. I'm going to have to spend some money. I may wait a few days since I just spent some money on a new HomePod, and I don't want to make my wife more mad, but I'm going to do it. I
am here for you on this journey of Alfred. I went through like my last, every now and then I just like scour the internet for cool Alfred workflows, and this past fall was definitely one of those times. So let me ask you a question. I want to believe it's possible for me to ask you this question and then us not talk about it for a half an hour. Because it connects to this actual topic that we're really discussing right now. What task app are you using right now?
Things, but very lightly. I mentioned our CRM that I use at work, and we're actually in the process of updating to a much newer, better version of the same CRM where it can remind me, like, you need to reach out to this customer about this thing. Like, I can use it as my task manager, and then it keeps up with when I have been in touch and what I've been in touch about, and so I have that full history there as well. And so that's really kind of what I have been needing, and I'm very excited about that. So things is still my task manager. I have things on my Mac. It's right next to Outlook, and I have it on my phone and my iPad and my watch, but it's usage. I could probably go to reminders for how I'm using it.
So the challenge for me with reminders and Todoist, which I recently took a little bit of a dive into, is that both of them don't have any kind of concept of, hey, I want to be working on this task today, so show it to me in a sort of a today view or a forecast, but it's not actually due today. Yeah. So don't like turn red or show me a time that it needs to be done by, but definitely show it to me. And that was, I really, really like Todoist a whole lot. It integrates with a calendar app I use called Fantastical. And I like the natural language input where it's like, take out the trash tomorrow at 2 p.m. That is enough for it to know to add the 2 p.m. due date. But I just really need to have what things and what my current one do, which is Omnifocus, which is where you can just have a list of things that is on a today list and they don't have to be due necessarily. Now, Things does something, I swear this connects to automation. Things, if you go to the next day and you didn't do something on your today list, it just like keeps them all on your today list.
Yes, which is why I switched to Things to begin with. That was what I love about it. And I will say that, like, as much as I kind of wish that Things had like a subscription pricing and that the phone and the iPad app were the same instead of two different purchases because of shortcuts reasons that we don't have to get into. One nice thing is I have just paid for Things on all three of the devices. There's no recurring costs. So if I want to keep using it in a basic way over reminders, I can do that. It's not a big deal. And so I do. I haven't switched, but I think now if I had it to do over, I would probably just stick with reminders instead, especially because the Mac version of Things is $50. But that piece, though, is my favorite thing about Things. What you just mentioned about it just rolls over to the next day.
Yep. And that's the only it's like probably the core hang up I've had with OmniFocus over the years is that OmniFocus will not any longer show you something that was yesterday, because it's looking at a today assignment as not being like, hey, this is like something I just want to be working on, keep it here, like so that it's on my radar. It's thinking of it as more as like a time or a date that something becomes available for you to do, which is useful, but not as much to me, because if I look at my 1,000 tasks in OmniFocus, I'd say like 950 of them are technically available to me right now, but I don't want to be thinking about or doing them all at the same time. I just want like 5 to 20 of them that are always in view. So anyway, the new beta for OmniFocus actually has JavaScript automation baked into it. And you can basically, it seems possible that you could just take that implementation and write it in JavaScript so that if something, if you make something show up on your what's called the forecast view, and it becomes the next day, then it would just stay. It would either stay on your forecast view or it would do something that OmniFocus does where it tags it with a tag called the today tag, which forces it to show up on your today view, even if it has a defer date of a previous date.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's another automation avenue that I'm looking to exploring. One day I swear I'm going to get you back on that train, and then we'll automate together in OmniJS land, which is the name of their fork of JavaScript. I mean, the other main two that people talk about are like Keyboard Maestro and Hazel. And Hazel is an app that like manipulates files automatically on your hard drive. That what that one's all about. And then Keyboard Maestro is, I think, literally capable of doing almost anything on your Mac. I would highly suggest you check that one out.
Yeah, I should just watch some YouTube videos and see what it's capable of. And I have Hazel, but the way I work with files, most of them live, again, in that CRM. So I have it, it runs, it cleans off my desktop. If any file stays there for too long, it empties my trash. That's about all it does. But I owned it before, and it was like $5-10 to upgrade to the newest version. And so I just did that, and I use it, but not extremely.
I know that you can do fancy stuff like have it recognize, like if you download a bill from, say, like Baltimore Gas and Electric is who does our gas and heating bill. Our gas and electric bill. And, I know that you can do stuff like have it look for those words inside of the PDF and then know to like file it in a particular folder where you keep bills. I know that stuff's possible. I just never have gone that far. For me, it's like what you said, basic things like, hey, if this document has been sitting on my desktop unopened for, 30 days, then trash it or move it to the documents folder.
Yeah.
But yeah, Keyboard Maestro might be how you automate Slack a little bit, because Keyboard Maestro does stuff like pause and like presses key. It presses keys for you. It does keystrokes. So you could do things like, I had one where I'm like really bad at filling out tedious forms, and I have this rental loan agreement that all of my band students fill out who rent an instrument at home at the beginning of each fall. And I had this thing, I wrote in Keyboard Maestro where I would it would show up a prompt that would ask me for the kid name, the instrument name, and the serial number. And then it would just open the Finder, duplicate a template of the loan agreement form, open it, fill out all the necessary form fields, close it, save it, and then retitle it the name of that kid, and then delete the original template. So it was like kind of cool to watch it all happen. And it really required next to no knowledge of how to use it, because you're just again, like with shortcuts, you're just taking a library of actions and you're dragging and dropping them in the order you want. So like one of the actions was type this key. One of the actions was type this key. One of the actions was pause 5 seconds, so on.
Yep. Well, maybe we can get back together at some point and discuss how I'm using it down the road.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Okay. App of the week, album of the week. We can power through this. I don't have I'm still processing my album of the week, so I'll be short on that one. But do you have an order you want to go through these? Okay. Sweet. So I have been using an app that received some love. I'm going to take it back to the class nerd for a moment. This is an app that we discussed for a little while, 1 or 2 particular episodes, which I will link to in the show notes. And this app is called DEVONthink. And I think it, honestly, I just have been trying it again lately. And my main issue with it before was that iCloud syncing was a mess. It's still really slow, but it's now working correctly. Like all 3 of my devices sync the database. The iOS version is giving me some trouble, but like on the Mac, as a tool for just dumping every single computery thing into and being able to find easily with search, it's a dream. Like I'm no longer differentiating between website articles, text notes, documents, or any of that stuff. Like is it a website I'm looking at? Save it into DEVONthink. DEVONthink will save it as a web archive and make all of the text of that website searchable. Is it an email? Sure. Drag it into DEVONthink. Text searchable. Is it a document? Drag it into DEVONthink. Is it a PNG image? Drag it into DEVONthink. DEVONthink will turn it into a text searchable PDF. So like for years, I've had projects in my life where I wanted to like be looking at documents and websites and emails, but like in the same group rather than bouncing between different apps. And this is a perfect tool for like if you're, for example, like for me, when I take my band to adjudication, there's lots of emails and Google Docs and, Microsoft Word things flying around. Like I could save those all in a group in DEVONthink and see them in line and in association with one another, where it doesn't feel like I'm really like bouncing between different places on the web. I've just got them all under the same hood. And the search is ridiculous. Like it always finds what I want, and you can tag stuff. I'm kind of using it, honestly, like the same way I used to use Evernote, but with a stronger emphasis on putting documents inside of it, unless it's a document that I update on a regular basis.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about that app. So glad you're able to use it like that. That's awesome.
I've been recently saving Animal Crossing themed TikToks to DEVONthink. And it literally, because I want to build my dream island and I don't want to forget a 10-second video tutorial someone made on how to properly water my flowers. So I save it to DEVONthink. And sure enough, as a web archive, like it finds it when I search, even though it's a video.
I have not gotten on the Animal Crossing train. I don't have a Switch, and they're impossible to find right now. So I'm kind of glad for that, because I feel like it would consume everything. So my app, I mentioned it at the very beginning of all this when we were talking about the HomePod, but the Dark Noise app on iOS. Have you used this?
I was going to ask you about it when you mentioned it. I have not heard of this.
It is the best white noise app that I have ever seen. Every other white noise app, the UI is terrible. There are ads everywhere. And this one, I mean, it's like $3, $4. You know, it's not unreasonable in any way, but it's not free, unlike some others. But it uses all the latest iOS technologies. So it's got shortcuts, and you can, build in using white noise. You could put it in as part of your going to bed routine. You could, if you want to sleep with sound on and have it play through a HomePod, something like that. It's super user-friendly. The sounds are great. The UI is incredible. And when the pandemic hit, the developer opened up the test flight beta to anybody. He opened up as many spots as Apple would let you have, just for people who were starting to work at home and trying to figure it out. And I got on the beta and fell in love and was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pay him $4 for this thing. And so it is so nice to, I just have a couple catchphrases with the HomePod, and I'll tell it which sound I want to listen to, and it puts it on the HomePod automatically for me. And he's adding new features to where you can mix sounds together and automate what volume different sounds start at when you start them via a shortcut, and all sorts of great stuff. So, really, really recommend Dark Noise if you need a white noise app.
This has got everything.
Yes.
It's got heavy rain, drippy rain, thunderstorm, distant thunder, rain, creek, river, waterfall, underwater, fountain, shower.
I oddly find the office sounds really soothing. As someone who used to work in an office and is now in my bedroom, I turn on the office one a lot. It's just like keyboards clicking, and occasionally someone walks by, and like it's really nice, and I don't know why, but I love it.
I wonder if we do white noise. We actually have this thing called what is it called? It's for Theo. It's called I want to say it's called a Hatch, maybe. It's like a little white noise hub that you can control from your phone. And, he's still in our room. I think we're going to have to buy a Hatch once he starts sleeping in his own room, because I don't really sleep with any kind of white noise, but it is a very, very heavy white noise machine. And I mean, obviously this could be a really good solution as well. So I'm glad you mentioned this. This is such a nicely designed app.
It's such a great app. Yeah. I didn't think, I had heard on podcasts, like when this app came out, I was like, I mean, I don't use white noise a ton. And I mean, how great can a white noise app be compared to a free one? But I got on the test flight for this thing, and I was like, I understand the hype now.
Yeah. Right on. Very, very cool. See, you could add a step to your bedtime shortcut that starts playing this through the HomePod.
Yep.
Yeah.
And And play it with a timer. So you could say play it for 30 minutes and then stop. And not just in the shortcut. Dark noise has actions that are like play this sound for this amount of time, and it can just do it. It's not reliant on shortcuts wait action.
This is truly a premium white noise app. Truly.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Solid pick. I don't have much to say about my album of the week. I've just been listening to the new Fiona Apple, and it's just she is precisely the right kind of and amount of weird for my tastes, and I'm just like eating it up.
I'm going to add it to my Apple Music right now. I'm going to do it because I've heard such good things, and I don't know why. I think just because of weird quarantine bubble, I've just kind of missed adding it.
And like similar musical ideas thread the songs together, but not in a way where it's like she's intending to do it like a conceptual way, like a concept album. Like just like it's clear that it seems to me like she was just writing these songs with similar themes on her mind and similar musical ideas running through her mind. But that she's not like, it doesn't sound like she's making a conscious effort to show you, hey, did you know that like that was like a motif from the previous song? Like it's not that kind of thing. It's just that from song to song, you just feel like a musical thread, but not an overt one.
Yeah. Oh, look, one friend listening in Apple Music, and there's your face. You are listening to this album.
That's me. Yes, there I am.
So I'm going to go maybe a little less weird, but a little more obscure. One of my probably all-time favorite artists is a singer-songwriter that lives here in Nashville by the name of Shawn McConnell. And he's written country songs for, some of the biggest artists, Tim McGraw, other big country singers. But Shawn himself is just an incredible singer. And then his songs are amazing. And he came up with an album since this quarantine launch called Live at the Basement East. And I love this album for a few reasons. One, I was at the show that it was recorded at back when we could still go to concerts. And so it takes me back to a happier time. And I know that I would be willing to bet that no one else who's listening to this podcast was at that show in Nashville. So there may be some sentimental value only for me. But it has some of his best songs all together. So you get a good sampling of his music. But yeah, it was recorded back. I know my wife was very, very pregnant, like 7, 8 months pregnant, and our son is now 10 months old. So it's been a little while. I think it was back in April or May of last year. And incredible live album. And then also back at March 1st or 2nd, again, time is irrelevant, we had a really bad tornado come through Nashville, and my family and I are blessed that it was several miles from our house, but the Basement East was destroyed, the venue that this was recorded at. And so it's kind of this picture of this venue too. So this album is very personal to me almost, that I don't know, but I also want other people to hear Shawn McConnell, and it's my album of the week. I've been listening to it a ton, and so I pick what I want.
You've provided a good context, because I will appreciate listening to it way more knowing all of that about it.
Every once in a while, I think I can hear myself laugh. So you've heard me laugh a few times. Let me know if you think you hear me in the audience in between songs. He'll make a joke or something.
Yeah, that's good. It's like a Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Where's Craig?
Yeah. Songs. If you're like, I don't know what to check out. The song "Shaky Bridges" is a great one, and I Don't Want to Know. Oh, and Queen of St. Mary's Choir. Those three, top 3 on the album, but listen to the whole thing because it's awesome. Cool.
Well, that brings us to a close. I think we knew we would talk about automation this much.
Yes, we did. I'm surprised we had the stamina during everything that's going on in the world, but then again, I'm not. Well,
as with the troubleshooting the HomeKit stuff, there's definitely a capacity for this kind of creative tinkering that I have right now, and it has a lot to do just with how much free time is in my day. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
absolutely not. But I also have way more children than you, so
yeah, it's like three times the number
plus
of children.
My job is way busier right now, so.
Two of your children talk and walk
And argue.
and argue with each other. Yeah, school is interesting. I mean, it's been mentioned in the past 3 or 4 episodes as I have been talking to a handful of people who are still in the field of education, and it's like the wrong amount of routine for me. Like, I definitely have online check-ins with my students that I'm doing, and I'm definitely grading work. But the timing of them is like inconsistent, and the amount that I grade, like I have enough, like I sort of am designing some parts of my schedule, and I'm also choosing my assignments enough so that it's like you have to kind of tweak as a music teacher. Like, band isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
So I sort of like, depending on what I assign them, it dictates like what my grading is going to look like. Like 2 weeks ago, I have a student teacher right now. It took us every spare minute of our week just to grade this assignment that I gave. And then last week was like no time at all. So anyway, it's different, but no, I'm sure. So you're on the clock.
And yeah, from the moment my kids wake up at 7 a.m. until they go to sleep at 7:30-ish p.m., I'm and working and all that in between. It's crazy.
All right, Craig. Well, given that we're not doing the class nerd right now in our lives, I'm going to be having you here more often, and those who love what we were talking about should definitely check out other episodes you have been on. We talked about task management a couple seasons ago, and then your first episode you were on the show actually was also about this topic of automation. So I will link those in the session notes, as well as a link to the Class Nerd podcast, which, while we are currently not making that show, if you're a music educator looking to enhance yourself technologically, it seriously, like, I'm very, very proud of our work on that show.
I agree. Yes.
If you like, there's really nothing you wouldn't like if you like this show. If you think that this show gets a little bit rambly and has too much B-roll in it, then you'll love the Class Nerd. It's very tightly edited and focused, always trying to bring really, really applicable tech tips into the teacher's life. And if you like the bantery stuff, you'll still like it, because it's just, it's like literally the same 2 people you're listening to right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been fun to talk to you again, Robby. I've missed it.
Since it's going to happen again soon, I guess until then, stay classy.
And stay nerdy.
Hey, if you are joining us from the Class Nerd feed and you're still hanging around, it's me, Robby, and I just wanted to let you all know that I think that our next episode of Music Ed Tech Talk is going to resonate with a lot of you. I am having on the orchestra teaching colleague at my school, and we are going to talk about how we use FileMaker to assess students' design curriculum and keep track of all of the different sides and elements and dimensions of our music program. I know that FileMaker was a popular topic on the Class Nerd, something that a lot of people wrote in asking for more information on, and that episode is going to be just that. It's going to be a little bit of some philosophy behind the teaching ideas that we have that led us to needing to use something like FileMaker, but then it's going to also be all about like what actually is FileMaker accomplishing for us. So I hope you'll check it out. Thanks for joining us.